and welcome to this licensing hearing panel. The first agenda item is election of chairperson. Any nominations? Is that seconded? Thank you. Councillor Hoke-Roscott, you're the chairperson.
Thank you. Welcome. I think it would be remiss of me to say after our last meeting that nothing is predetermined here. We obviously have read the paperwork and thank you all for sending that in. We listened to each case individually and we make the right decision for the people of Medway. So, can I hand over to Katie, who's our licensing officer? Oh, sorry, I've done the minutes. Yeah. Whoops. Thank you, Julie. So we need the apologies. Any apologies here this morning? No? And records of the last meeting, which that's been done. So, Katie, over to you then. Oh, matters arising. I always forget that one. And then what we'll do is we'll start with Katie introducing herself and go round this way, if that's okay. Are you happy over there or do you need to come forward? You're happy there. And can I dismiss Stephen? Dismiss Stephen. Katie.
Yes, I'm Katie Honeywood. I'm the Assistant Licensing Manager.
Kyle Rogers, Legal Advisor to the panel.
Julie Francis Beard, Democratic Service Officer.
Councillor Ron Sands, member of this panel, and Councillor for Hu and High Housetown.
Councillor Joanne Halcroft-Scott, Chair of this panel, Councillor for Luton, and also, if you're speaking, you just need to press the button. I forgot to say that. Okay.
Councillor Sharon Jackson, member of this panel, and also local councillor for Strood West.
Councillor Stephen Hubbard, member for Strood North and Finsbury. I'm the fourth member, so in a few minutes I'll be leaving.
My name's Shannon and I'm a resident of Carlton Avenue.
I'm Daniela McCoy-Beer and I'm resident of Carlton Avenue.
I'm Danny Fralish, I'm the Operations Manager from Punch Pubs.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Piers Warren. I'm a solicitor at TLT Solicitors and I represent Punch here today as the applicants.
Good morning. My name's Simon Mycock. I'm the DPS for the Cricketers in Sturdy Avenue.
Okay, thank you. And any declarations of interest? Okay. Stephen, you're free to go. Have a lovely day. And over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. On the 18th of June 2026, we received a full variation application for the premises licence for the Cricketers, Sturdy Avenue, Gillingham. The current premises licence is for the sale of alcohol Monday to Wednesday 10 to 11 p.m, Thursday to Saturday 10 to midnight, and Sunday 12 to 10:30 p.m. There's live music, recorded music and dancing Monday to Wednesday 10 to 11 p.m, Thursday to Saturday 10 to midnight, and Sunday 12 to 10:30 p.m. And currently there's late night refreshment Thursday to Saturday 11 p.m. to midnight. A copy of the current premises licence can be found at Appendix A on pages 11 to 15. This application is to extend the licensable area shown on the submitted plan to include the external area. This is to allow the use of an outside bar. It's also to extend the sale of alcohol in all regulated entertainment hours for Sunday to Wednesday until midnight, Thursday to Saturday until 1 a.m. In addition, it's to extend the late night refreshment Thursday to Saturday until 1 a.m. and to add late night refreshment Sunday to Wednesday, 11 p.m. to midnight. The application has also included additional conditions. A copy of the application can be found at Appendix B on pages 17 to 37. During the consultation period, the applicant agreed conditions with trading standards. These can be found at Appendix C on page 39. Conditions were also agreed with Kent Police. These can be found at Appendix D on pages 41 to 45. We received 11 representations from members of public. These can be found at Appendix E on pages 47 to 68. Included within these representations were 7 video clips. However, 4 unfortunately cannot be shared due to technical issues. We received supplementary evidence from the agent. This can be found in the supplementary agenda. It is for the panel to decide on the appropriate action for this application, taking into account all the evidence brought to your attention, both written and oral, alongside the Licensing Act 2003 and its associated guidance. The panel can decide to grant the application as applied for, amend the application, add or amend conditions, refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. So it goes now to objections. You have the floor. Are you all going to be speaking? The agent and the applicant, sorry. Applicants, then objections. So you're not, that's the order, if that's okay. Right, are you all going to be speaking, or is it just...
Chair, I will be speaking, and obviously we have Danny and Simon who are here who can answer any questions obviously the committee may have, or indeed any of the residents as we go. But I'll be making the substance of our submission. Well, thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, everyone, and thank you to the residents for attending as well. As you've heard from Katie, this is an application. You can find the substance of it, at least the start of the substance of it, at page 8 of the agenda papers. There's 2 parts to the application that I'm going to ask you to take when you come to your deliberations in order, because they are separate and obviously need separate considerations. And those 2 are effectively to amend the plans to allow for an external bar in the garden, so you need to add licensable activities to the garden to do that, so redline the garden, and you've seen that in the plan that's provided. There are conditions related to the garden's use which are on page 8, so you'll see that there's 5 of those there, okay? And they relate to when it can be used, constant supervision, making sure it's locked up when people aren't there. And I'll address you in terms of the substance of why we say actually external bars help promote the licensing objectives in time. The second part of the application, and I think probably the most contentious part of the application, is the extension to hours across the week. Effectively, 1 additional hour each day from that is currently on the premises license, which you'll find at page 7, or indeed a copy of the license is in the papers. And then an additional 1.5 hours on Sunday, because at the moment the license has the old Sunday trading hours of 10:30. We are going to ask, with respect, if we can amend the application as it was submitted following consideration of the residents' concerns. We are going to ask the committee to remove the extensions for regulated entertainment, apart from an additional half an hour on Sundays, to take Sunday regulated entertainment from 10:30 to 11 o'clock. But other than that, we'll keep regulated entertainment as is on the premises license. Now, we're offering to do that following consideration of the residents' concerns, and actually, because when you hear why we're going for this application, why we're applying for it, that actually is not necessary to the core of why we're applying. So we hope that gives the residents some comfort. We are listening and want to work with them. We're also proposing a condition that would require the premises to provide a phone number to residents in case of disturbance, so that they can call the premises immediately and have that dealt with immediately, because that's obviously much better than stewing about things and not being able to do anything about it at the time. So those are the amends we wish to make for the application. You'll have noted in the papers that there are a significant number of conditions being added to the premises license. At the moment, the premises license has no conditions in Annex 2 or Annex 3. It has 1 condition, which I've noticed, which sits in the old-fashioned conditions that actually has been superseded in any event by the fire regulatory order, so I'm not even going to touch that. But at the moment, the license effectively has, outside of the mandatory conditions, no conditions on it at all, and that's because it's an old license that hasn't been changed. So if I can run through quickly where we can find all these conditions, so we're absolutely clear as to what we are doing here. At page 39 of the papers, you will find 5 conditions that have been agreed with Kelly Payne, the Trading Standards Officer. So they're to do with Challenge 25 policies, training, etc. You'll then find at page 43, and this is where I just want to be very careful that we understand exactly what's here, because there were a couple of changes within the papers. You'll find at page 43, at page 42, my apologies, a condition for door supervisors in terms of the information that needs to be provided to them. That was slightly changed in wording from what appears on page 44, but that's the wording that was agreed with the police. Page 43, you'll see the start of the rest of the conditions that were agreed with the police, which again, we are inviting the committee to add to the licence if they're minded to grant this application. So that includes page 43, CCTV, page 44, training, page 45, incident log, page 44, second incident log, third refusals log. The Challenge 25 and door supervisor conditions there are already in, because we've got the trading standards one and the amended licence, and then on page 45, the notices required. So what you have effectively is 5 conditions offered as the application, 5 conditions agreed with trading standards, door supervisor, CCTV, and these 4 other conditions. So that's, by any standards for a pub, a robust operating schedule, which can be added to this application to promote the objectives if you're minded to grant. You will also find at page 41 4 additional conditions that were agreed with the police following the World Cup. And we'll address you on the World Cup in a minute, but those 4 conditions come out of learnings from operating what was a significant major event for all pubs around the country, and candidly, I'm afraid to say, for various reasons, caused quite a lot of problems for quite a lot of premises. That I know have been dealt with by various officers and are still ongoing. But there's another 4 conditions there that relate to, 2 of them relate to showing sport, 2 of them actually are general conditions throughout the use of the premises, including no glassware out the front after 9 p.m. on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays. Okay? So that doesn't include the garden, but there's quite robust conditions there. So what you have here is an application to add the garden to the licence, extend the hours, I would suggest, to a modest degree, and get a whole raft of conditions that promote the licensing objectives. For the benefit of residents and a reminder to the committee, and obviously your legal advisor will advise you on these points, I think it's important that we set out that this is a variation application, not a review of the premises licence. That has very different consequences as to the determination you can make, as you all know, and Mr. Rogers, your legal advisor, will no doubt be fully aware of the case of Taylor and Manchester from 2012, and for reference, paragraphs 77 and 79, if he wishes to look at them directly, which say that the committee, in essence, I'm going to distill what they say, which is why I'm giving you the paragraphs so you can check I'm not, hoodwinking anyone here. Paragraphs 77 and 79 say, effectively, a committee may only look at the application, so the extensions, and you can't take away what is already on the premises licence, because this isn't a review and the evidence isn't there to support any such action. So that is a matter of law where we stand. So I just want to make it clear so that we all understand what we can and can't do. It's also important to note and remind you, of course, at this stage, paragraphs 2.1 and 9.12 of the guidance talk about the expertise of police and your other responsible authorities and being your main source of advice in their areas of expertise. So I'm going to ask you to give significant weight when you come to making your determination that none of them have extant representations in this matter. So they've all determined, and in fact worked closely with us to agree conditions that they believe mean that this application can be granted to promote the objectives. So very quickly, let's just touch on the cricketers so we all know what we're talking about. It's been a pub for a very long time. I'm afraid I didn't have time to go into the history of the pub. I was away on holiday last week. I usually like to give a bit of a background and a few facts, so apologies. It's fair to say, and from Punch's point of view, it has struggled in recent times. But that's not unusual. This has been the worst time for pubs since the 2012 recession. I can say that with some confidence. I'm a trustee of the BII, the British Institute of Innkeeping, so they have 14,000 members, and 75% of them this year do not expect to make a profit. So it's very challenging times for pubs, and lots of pubs are closing, and I'm sure you've seen that in your areas as well. So the fact that Simon and his son Edward, who's sitting at the back, have taken on a pub in February this year, you know, kudos to them, candidly, for taking on a premises. They invested £50,000 into the pub as well. So a significant investment to turn this pub around. And I think it's fair to say they've turned around a pub that wasn't doing much into a hub for the community. It does a lot of events. It does lots of different kinds of activities. Bingo for sort of mainly some of the older customers. It does events for charity. Of course, it shows the football, but it's a whole mix of things. The food offer's been improved from what was basically, I used to call it in my day, chicken in a basket offer, to a much more substantial and well-regarded offer, which has brought in families and people. So the pub has become truly a hub of the community, and I think we have to celebrate that. With that comes teething troubles, and we don't shy away from that at all. And Simon and Ed would be the first to admit that obviously when you take this on and things become successful, there are challenges, and some of them still trying to, you know, find the final solution for. But we're getting very, very close, and this application goes some way to assist. The World Cup was a perfect storm in terms of the hours of the application, in terms of the heat wave we've had, in terms of when the matches were on, in terms of delays to matches, in terms of, I'm afraid, government at the very last minute changing who should open and who shouldn't open, which caused a significant problem because one day pubs who had been responsible and got temporary event notices to show the football and were putting on door staff or doing, you know, putting in measures, extra staff to manage these things, suddenly were competing with pubs who were just allowed to open the Friday before the government said everyone can open. So they hadn't made any provision to do things. Some of the pubs didn't open, some did, some got overran. That meant that there was a real difficulty and challenge added into the mix of what was already a difficult game to manage. So Simon, of course, where there's mistakes made, will apologise and hold his hands up, and he's worked very closely and proactively with the police about that. You'll have seen in the representations about the particular night in question. But for the police not to be here, having agreed those conditions, should give you some comfort as to the measures and the proactive nature in which those matters were dealt with. So we do want to say to the residents, and I made this point earlier at the back from Punch and Simon, we apologise for the disturbance certainly that was caused during that tournament. As I said earlier, they did apply for temporary event notices, so whilst it may look like they were trading over the hours on their premises licence, there was a legal right to do so under temporary event notices and under government extensions. There was no trading outside of hours that were permitted by these activities. And indeed, during the football, they used temporary event notices. One of the logistical problems was that obviously if England finished first, the next match would be on a certain day. If they finished second in the group, it would be on a different day. So temporary event notices were covered a magnitude of days across weeks and weekends that weren't then eventually used for football. Simon used those to extend the hours, to observe, given that we were coming to this application, what effect it had. And one of the effects it had was that it extended the period by which people left the premises. One of the teething problems they've found in this premises in particular is at closing time as it is at the moment, you're throwing everyone out when they're not quite ready to go. People are waiting for very limited taxi offers, Uber offers in the area. So they're outside, and that in itself causes a disturbance. With the later hours, people were staying inside. When their taxis arrived, they were able to go in a much more natural time. The reason why I think it's important to reflect upon the fact we've removed the regulated entertainment extensions from this application. It does mean that then we're not extending all the hours to keep on doing all the activities. It is legitimately to allow for that cut-off from regulated entertainment, which is an important part of the business, to flow through to a quieter and longer dispersal. So yes, I think probably the residents will say there's an element of trust that's been broken, and in fact I spoke to one of the residents. Simon is very keen that that is fixed, and at any time any resident wants to come and meet Simon, he'd be delighted to do so. Very quickly, and I appreciate, chairmen chair people often suggest I've been very comprehensive, which I take to mean I've gone on too long. But I think it's important that, I express everything that I need to. There's just a few legal points I wish to make, and then I'll invite questions. National Licensing Policy Framework was introduced in November 2025. This is given the status of guidance, so you must have regard to it in determining licensing matters. There are some key paragraphs that I just want to draw your attention to. So page 5, halfway down, the framework isn't numbered, which is unfortunate, so I can't point to a paragraph number, I'm afraid, but it's easy to find. Businesses need the flexibility to evolve and invest in their premises, programming and service models, and a licensing regime that supports innovation while maintaining public safety. The Licensing Policy Task Force highlighted the need for this framework to support a more consistent, transparent and pro-growth licensing regime. And over the page, at page 7, it says, licensing is designed to be enabling, not prescriptive. In fact, the paragraph is headed permissive by design. And this was how the Act was introduced in 2005 and then got sort of forgotten a bit. And then it goes on to say, focusing on supporting entrepreneurship, innovation, investment, and customer experience. This is also now reflected in the guidance at paragraph 1.18 that I'm sure has experienced licensing councillors, you'll have heard before. When making licensing decisions, all licensing authorities should consider the need to promote growth and deliver economic benefits. What we're saying here is that Simon has made a good start. He's turned around a pub. With that comes challenges as you get busier, but he has faced those and has found solutions that he thinks works. These applications support that and support how the premises can operate. So I've explained why that works for late night hours. A bar in a garden allows for constant supervision of the garden area because you have to have someone behind the bar. In fact, it's a condition of the license. It also stops pinch points around doorways and at the internal bar. And as you know, in a heat wave, no one wants to be inside in a pub. Everyone wants to be out in the pub garden. So sending everyone in to try and get drinks and everyone out and food in and food out, plates in and plates out, causes pinch points around doorways. So actually to alleviate that, the outside bar promotes the objectives of public safety and the supervision promotes the objective of prevention of public nuisance. So that's why we say, and I'm going to submit to you, that if we put the World Cup to one side, because that's not indicative of the way pubs operate or indeed standard operation. We take into account the responsible authorities haven't made representations and the weight that one should give that. Take into account observations from Simon and his team on the Thames and use of the garden. Take into account these additional robust conditions and the case law and framework and guidance. I submit this application can be granted. And of course, ultimately, if we are proven to be wrong in all of this, the remedy is that residents have the right to review the premises license. And my final point is this pub currently employs 15 people in this market. That's really good. And I think we should be supporting local businesses that have the courage, candidly, to open at this time in such a difficult market. Thank you very much. I hope I've been comprehensive just enough. And I'd invite any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anything Simon and Danny want to add?
No, I would agree. I think that's entirely comprehensive. Sorry, I think I've turned it off. No, nothing further. I think Piers has been really comprehensive and echoes all of my sentiments and ours from Punch.
Obviously, thank you to Piers for putting across our position. I would like to echo what he said and give my apologies to residents that have been affected during the World Cup period in particular. And please do understand that we have taken on board the feedback. We've also endeavoured to make changes and improvements in how we operate so that our impact within the immediate community is diminished. And equally, that we've taken steps to be as encompassing to the community as possible. So we are not focused on one particular type of market, and we operate throughout the week to try and cater for everybody within that community. So again, apologies, and we have taken on board the feedback robustly.
Okay, thank you. So it's over to the objectors now. Is there a main spokesperson, or you're all going to say something? Okay. questions to the panel? Yeah? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I take on board what you've said about the World Cup. Just want to say I've lived on Carlton Avenue for 20 years. I've never had a problem with the pub, never had an issue with it. My issue was particularly, I know you want to set aside the World Cup, but that England versus Mexico game started at 2 a.m. kickoff, and the pub decided to screen it entirely outdoors. So everybody was cheering and shouting, and nobody could sleep because it was a heat wave. And it just feels like it's a complete lack of respect for the residents, and also the volume of music in the outdoor garden till late at night. I understand it's a pub, it's going to be noisy, but the time, I would like to know what time the music is meant to stop outdoors, because it's been going well past 11.
Yes, so as I said, in the ordinary course of business, then the music would have to stop at the same times that the garden shuts, and in fact at 11 o'clock at the moment, because the garden isn't licensed. The second point I'd wish to make in relation to that is that when it was going later, that was because they had applied for temporary event notices for the World Cup. Temporary event notices go through the police and the environmental protection officers, so they were fully aware of what was being put on and provided. And in fact, there were lots and lots of premises, and I'm sure we've all experienced other pubs that put on the football in the gardens at the time, because partly of the heat wave and partly of how busy it was. So there was a customer safety element. That's not the only element that was taken into account. So it was all done legally, albeit I can understand from your point of view, it looks like they're breaching the hours and being cynical about that. We're not extending the hours for regulated entertainment anymore, apart from half an hour on a Sunday, which, well, we're asking the committee to do that. So hopefully that gives you a bit of comfort. But the World Cup was a perfect storm, I can say, from an industry point of view. And I don't think a very helpful one in terms of timings, weather, all of those factors just played into it. So we can only apologise and understand that, yes, it caused disturbance. But that frankly, well, certainly for the next 2 World Cups and the next 2 European Championships, couldn't happen in any event because of the timings of the matches.
So the rules were that they could screen the World Cup in the beer garden, even though it was 2 a.m. kickoff.
Yes, they had to get a permission from, well, it's not a permission, it's a notification, and I shouldn't call it a permission, it's a notification. You notify the authorities that you're going to do it, but the police and environmental health officers have a right to object to that, and they allowed it to go through, as they did for lots of pubs that were showing the football in gardens. So there was, if you like, a mechanism there, albeit I can see from your point of view it failed. All we can say is that there are learnings from that in terms of the disturbance it caused.
Thank you for that. And as just to echo Piers' point, it's an isolated situation for the reasons that we've said. But from my perspective as the ops manager, and in terms of what I've seen on the back of Simon's actions after the World Cup, and hearing your points in terms of the speakers, even though the World Cup ended, 2-3 weeks ago, he's already taken action, and we've put a new sound system into the garden, new speakers. And that allows better control of the noise in the garden. So irrelevant of what we're asking for, which is, you know, no change to the entertainment hours, and expressing that this was an isolated situation, but all the same, because of Simon's respect for the neighbours, we have looked and we have supported and invested in different speakers in the garden, so that there is more protection, more, I don't know what the right technical word is, I'm afraid.
I think it's control. So what was before were big speakers,
yeah,
which just stick the noise out, and you have to have it at a certain level for everyone to hear. What they've got now are small, little speakers that are directional, which don't have that same effect of blasting noise out. And then when they're properly set, which you're in the process of doing at the moment, so there's an issue with quite where the height is of them at the moment. They need to be brought down. That allows for all volumes to be reduced in the garden, so everyone in the garden can hear it, but it doesn't get out to the same extent at all.
Okay, in terms of the 10s, you said the dates. So on the 24th and 25th of July, you say, okay, that this was well past the World Cup. New speakers were in place, I'm assuming, at that time?
Sorry, if I can reply. No, what happened was in the immediate aftermath of the World Cup, we had a survey done through a third-party company who measured noise with the existing setup. And what I asked them to try and achieve was to reduce the periphery noise in the garden and give us increased zonal control, because the way that it was set up originally when I arrived was that it was linked to the internal volume as well. So it was very difficult to get different thresholds. So they then came back and they've done an initial installation. And what they've done is they've put smaller speakers around the garden, which again, as we say, are directional. They're now coming back to do a review on the noise levels from those. And one thing I've identified over the last sort of 10 days or so since the World Cup is that where they're positioned, they're too high, and that means that the noise is carrying. So even at a lower volume, the noise is still carrying over. So we've actually got three things that we're doing. One is they're coming back to move those, and that will be in the next couple of days, and certainly before the weekend. The second thing is that when we arrived, the garden was in quite a state of disrepair. And so early in the spring, we had to take measures to really sort of pollard quite a lot of the trees and bushes and take things back. We've got a company that at the moment is quoting us to put trellising around the fencing. And later in the year, when the heat wave's over, we'll be planting more greenery. So echoing what Piers said, obviously the World Cup, obviously we were new to the environment, obviously we suddenly had an explosion of people in terms of numbers from where the pub was historically. What we've done is we've said, okay, those things didn't necessarily work for the neighbours, and we know obviously that there were definitely issues in terms of how some of that noise travelled, but it's what can we do to mitigate that in the future. So we are doing patrols now at the weekends in particular, so we had live music on Saturday night. We're going to the immediate vicinity and a little bit further just to try and make sure that we have as many controls over the noise as possible. Having seen that the noise carried with the position of the speakers, they're being lowered so that it's lower down. We've got the increased control now so that we can balance the sound outside. The other complicating factor, if you like, is that the area in general, I think, is busier, not just in our pub. I know there's a new shop that's just opened over the road from the pub, which is contributory to the number of people in the environment. And I'm not trying to say or mitigate anything about us at all. Please don't think that, because I'm not. We take responsibility for our environment, but that is something that's created a new aspect to how we have to manage noise in the local environment. But the seriousness with which I take it is I have submitted plans through to Punch for co-investment alongside us. We've got a specialist in terms of planting who's come and really done a survey on what plants will work best. And also in terms of the trellising, where I feel we've got potentially an issue as well, is particularly along the front fence and the back side fence, the height mismatch from the pavement. So although what it does effectively is it doesn't create enough of a screen. So that's something that we're definitely working on. The other thing, again, I really want to highlight it, because the difficulty in managing expectations as well comes into this a lot. So when we're talking about things like the World Cup, where we'd pre-planned and we'd taken on late licenses so that we could manage the World Cup and numbers, what happened was the media suddenly announced that the government was promoting late licenses, late attendances, late kickoffs. And so we had people that were coming to us saying, and it doesn't change how we operate, but their expectations were pubs are staying up until 5 a.m. And so the messaging that the local environment was receiving has contributed to customer expectations and how we manage it. But the noise issues specifically from the garden, we have really taken seriously and really are trying to address. And one of the reasons that Piers mentioned about having a direct access phone number is so that if there is a point where it is intrusive, someone can immediately be contacted and it can be resolved. Because we don't want a situation where people are upset or angry, because we all have to effectively live in the same area. The byproduct of the pub being busier is that means we need to take more steps to mitigate that activity. And as I say, the contributory factor of the new business over the road as well and their activities can perhaps lead to a point of cross-pollination, shall we say, which we're trying to also speak to them to mitigate as well. So hopefully that gives you some reassurance and certainly a few answers towards what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't had an issue with the pub. It's just recently with the volume of noise, the volume of music, and that's my main issue. And people obviously leaving later, more intoxicated, running around the streets, shouting, fighting. That's.
Sorry, if I just to respond to that just quickly. As Piers said, one of the reasons that we utilised some nights with the 10s that weren't specifically for England matches but may have been for other matches was because dispersals are a really huge part of what we do. One, obviously, is the controls throughout the day. So during the World Cup, we bought, I think in the end it was almost 2,000 bottles of water and had water stations around the gardens because of the heat and because obviously of the delays and things to try and reduce the amount of intoxication from people. But equally, we're trying to manage the new numbers, and we're trying to ensure that when people leave as a dispersal, we reduce the pinch points. And pinch points are created by putting a large number of people at the same time into one area. And so, as mentioned, one of the things that we found really difficult is if everybody leaves at whatever the given hour, let's say it's 12:15, and everybody's trying to book Ubers and taxis, you've then got congregations of different types of people that maybe haven't socialised at all evening, haven't noticed each other, but suddenly you've got 40, 50 people on the street. Some give up and walk down the road because they can't get a taxi, or they think if they go somewhere else they may get another taxi more easily. And one of the reasons that I'm trying to seek the additional hour, as mentioned, isn't to prolong activity, it's to allow us to disperse efficiently and effectively so customers can sit and wait for their taxi inside within the environment they're already in, so that the numbers of people going out and potentially creating any disturbance are diminished. And that's the reason we're coming at it from that angle. And it, as I say, it robustly isn't to have parties and throughout the evening. It's a method of having that dispersal policy effective and reducing what we've identified over the last 6 months as the areas that can lead to issues.
Okay, thank you. Given that you're applying for additional hours, I know you mentioned there was a change. You're not going to take on the regulated entertainment on. Can there be clarification on the hours? Because obviously the narrative says 1 o'clock on Thursday, but the application form was only until midnight. And also, can there be clarification with regards to non-standard times? Because obviously on the current licence, you've got Good Friday, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, etc. There's no variation for those days on your current licence. So does that mean that the hours you're applying for are the hours that will be in place on those special days when previously they weren't?
So we're not changing the non-standard timings. So they are as they appear on the premises licence, where they extend the hours. So New Year's Eve, for instance, there's an extension there. In terms of the hours that we are actually applying for, the application form shows the hours itself, and that's the, if you like, the document that matters. So forget live music and recorded music, because we've changed those, apart from we're asking for the extra half hour on Sunday. So all we're looking at is late night refreshment. We're still sticking with that. But the supply of alcohol is Monday to Thursday midnight, Friday and Saturday 1, Sunday midnight. And then 30 minutes drinking up time thereafter, which is on, so that's pages 30 and 31 of the application forms.
But the narrative was saying that you was planning on staying open till 1 on a Thursday. But you're actually applying till midnight on a Thursday, not 1.
Yes, so the application is what matters. The narrative in the papers, apologies if there's a mistake in those, but that's what we're applying for, and that's in the application.
Piers, could I just ask you to answer the lady's question, because you've answered about New Year's Eve, but she did ask about Christmas Eve, Christmas Day.
So those standard timings, it is my understanding, and I'd have to go back and check the application. Yes, so this license has the very old Christmas and Good Friday hours, which mean you have to stop at a certain time and start again. We'd propose those are removed. But that doesn't add any extra hours to the activities at all. It just turns into standard Thursday, Friday, Saturday hours. So if Christmas Eve falls on a Tuesday, then it's the hours for Tuesday, midnight, etc. The only one that I think would stay is New Year's Eve, and these aren't very well written, if I'm perfectly honest. They're challenging to read, which says New Year's Eve 10, unless it falls on a Sunday, 12. Now what that means is that's an extension to 10 a.m., which were the original opening hours, or 12 on a Sunday, which was the original opening hours. The way that's usually worded is New Year's Eve to remain open until start of trading hours the following day. And that's actually the sort of standard wording, but that's what this looks to achieve, but it's really badly worded, if I'm honest. But to be fair, if you could clarify that wording as a committee, there's no reason why you can't do it. The others I suggested just removed. And that just clarifies everything, makes it really, really simple. And obviously your officers can advise you on that, but it's a very good point, and thank you for pointing it out. Candidly, I don't know how anyone's supposed to read these things unless you've done licensing for 25 years.
So yeah, I just wanted clarity.
I will ask my colleagues to be a little careful when they draft these applications, so apologies for the error, but I'm glad we've clarified it.
Oh, my next question is with regards to licensed entertainment. Obviously, the Live Music Act states it deregulated a lot of entertainment with regards to hours of 8 and 11 p.m. For indoor use only. My concern is, I know you're saying that you're putting things into place, but many of the residents in the streets, as myself, my husband, people that live around us, some have children. I also look after my grandson. Some work shift work. Some have to get up and do jobs that involve looking after other people that live within the area or nationwide. I feel 11 o'clock is an adequate time for all music and entertainment to stop. I know that you've extended till midnight, which is fine, but I do feel that that just needs to stay indoors, and on your application form it does state indoors only. So is there going to be music outside after 11 o'clock, or is it all going to be indoors only?
In terms of regulated entertainment, after 11 it'd have to be indoors, because that's what it states. In terms of background music, then of course there could be, but that would have to be managed in the background, so no one should be hearing that outside of the boundaries of the garden in any event. I hope that clarifies things, but we're not extending any regulated entertainment from what's already permitted on the premises licence.
So, sorry, so with regards to that you're saying that you had a temporary event notice on the 24th of July. Was there a, do we know if there was a temporary event notice in place on the 24th of July? It wasn't a match day, it was way after the World Cup. Okay,
No,
so audible music and DJ announcements was actually heard extensively past the closing time of the entertainment, which is 00, way past that time. I just want to be rest assured that this isn't going to be something that would happen, because this isn't a one-off. This has happened on numerous occasions where the entertainment is way above the volume that it should be, past 11 o'clock. I live over 120 metres away. There is gardens, a row of houses and a road before my property, and I could hear, this isn't a World Cup day, so we're disregarding World Cup. I know that caused lots of issues. I could hear that very clearly in my house, which meant I had to close my windows. I just want to be rest assured that this isn't what you plan on doing. And obviously, why was it actually occurring if that isn't part of your licence?
Thanks for the question. I don't recall the specific day. I'm trying to remember the event that happened that day. I believe it was a Friday, from memory, or from working out the dates. The situation moving forward, obviously, is that there won't be an issue in future. We've put controls in place, and that includes warnings to the customers in the garden about the reduction in volume. I have a suspicion of what happened, and I can't be 100% sure that it was related to us, as discussed in terms of the other premises over the road. I'm not saying it wasn't. Please don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying it wasn't related to us. I will take steps to ensure that that doesn't happen again. And as discussed, we do have the issue over the road, which has affected noise pollution in the area late into the night. I wasn't on duty that evening, so I can't be 100% specific, but as I've said, we will take steps to ensure that the permitted hours are the limit.
I think if something like that were to happen, and obviously you live over 100 metres away, so the source could be a number of sources. If you phone, and I'm not saying it isn't, but if you phone the pub and ask them, if it is them, something to be done about it. If it's not them, they might be able to help you identify where it is, which might help actually then identify other sources of issue as well. So if we keep that communication open, we can resolve those matters hopefully more quickly.
It was actually from the pub, because the audio that was heard was the pub is now closed, which was 00 midnight, but music and DJ announcements was still being heard well into 0040. And that was a Friday night, and the entertainment licence was obviously for indoor use only, and it was very, very clear it was outside. I can actually tell you it was a Friday evening, and I believe it was something to do with a party. But obviously, if there wasn't a temporary events notice, then it shouldn't have been happening. And I'm just curious as to me, that shows how you're operating your premises at the moment. I know you're saying you don't intend to operate like that, but if that's a one-off now, and there's been previous ones prior to the World Cup as well, I hadn't noted down dates of those. But again, on Friday, I know you're allowed to play ambient music in the garden, but again, Friday the 31st of July, there was excessive music that I could still hear in my own property at 7:30, and I know that's within your right to have that, but again, the Live Music Act regulates the volume, and ambient noise should not be heard in my garden, and it was definitely coming from the pub and not somewhere else.
Well, certainly, again, that can be looked at, and with the zoning of the speakers, hopefully any reasons for that kind of ambient noise travelling at 7:30 would be reduced as well when that's all set up, and that's being done this week. My understanding is so. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I do have a question with regards to the prevention of harm to children. You're planning to licence the front area outside the pub, as well as obviously the beer garden, because you want to put a bar in. So obviously the front area is literally adjacent to a highway. There are 3 schools in close proximity. What fixed boundary is in place to show the boundary line that's actually on the plan? What steps will you be making to make sure that children walking past are not subjected to abuse, alcohol, noise, inappropriate behaviour, etc., as it is literally right by the public highway.
Thanks very much for that. It's something actually we've been really conscious of. So you probably noticed that we've put 3 tables at the front of the property on the gravel area. And the gravel area, as marked on the plan, is bound by a post and what was formerly a chain system. What I've done in the last few weeks is I've put bollard and barriers, so they're effectively screens. And we've done one section to make sure that it was something that we could manage and it would make a difference. The intention of the front area isn't to promote drinking. It's to provide a shaded area, particularly this time of year, and an additional cover for smoking when the weather's inclement. The prevention of any overspill and overflow is managed through monitoring and anecdotally through usage. Typically, those tables are used on a Sunday afternoon by families. That's been our peak use for them. And during the week, they tend to be unused apart from by smokers. The intention is for barriers to be put on the, if you looked at the pub on the left-hand side, to match the ones on the right-hand side as well. And then that creates an enclosed environment where there's only one entrance through the centre. And that seems to have worked pretty well with the right-hand side, and that's what we'll be doing for the left as well.
I just want to add about that night of the 24th and 25th of July. It was 100% coming from the pub because you could hear it was a party for someone named Rita. And although the doors were closed, so the music was not supposed to be, you could still hear the music. And you could hear somebody shouting at 12:30, Rita, Rita, on a loudspeaker. So these are the types of things that me as a resident are worried that the respect is not there.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, okay, so that gives me clarification of exactly what it was. So what happened was after the pub was closed, within the private environment, there was a staff member that was leaving. I didn't know that the noise volume was sufficient for it to travel because I wasn't in attendance, and that's certainly something that we will address. But there was it wasn't open to the general public at that point, so I apologise sincerely if there was noise travelling. One of the things that we have done now, as I say, is put in place the monitoring so that we will have recorded records of who's monitored at what time and when, and also when the music is ceased, so that I will be able to review those records and make sure that there's been no slip over.
And just to confirm, the music is meant to stop at 11, and after 11, it's indoors. Is that correct? The outdoor music as well.
Regulated entertainment, yeah. So you could have background music outside, but that would be so low level, you should not hear that in any event. If it goes over that, then that is not background music.
The background music outdoors past
Yes,
11 is permitted?
That's not regulated.
No.
Yeah.
So after 11, there should be no music played outdoors?
There should be, all regulated entertainment should be inside. Yes, absolutely. So that's the DJs, that's the karaoke, that's, you know, parties or bands, etc.
So can I ask, obviously I know that you have bands, the band's been playing at the Cricketers for years. I've lived in Carlton Avenue for 31 years, as I say. I've not really had many issues or problems. But in recent months, we've had hot weather. What implementation are you going to put in place so that the doors and windows stay shut as they should when live entertainment is occurring inside the premises as per the entertainment licence, to stop any noise? I mean, you're going to get it when the doors open, people popping outside, etc., etc. But my concern is obviously if late night entertainment is to still continue till midnight, have you put any measures in place? Because obviously you've said that you're not going to extend your licence for entertainment till 1 a.m. now, which obviously my question was originally about the 1 a.m. But, you know, what measures are put in place? Because even sometimes at 11:30 at night, having to hear the live band playing in my front room means I have to turn my telly up, which is a knock-on effect. So what measures have been put in place, please?
So as you've highlighted, obviously with heat wave at the moment, what we do ordinarily and which we haven't done as robustly, is make sure that all doors and windows are closed. One of the things that we're in discussion with Punch about as well is installing an air conditioning system as part of a refurbishment of the pub. And that will also address potentially windows, because the pub's quite old, so it has crystal windows which are single paned as well. So all of the elements within that contribute to noise travelling are proposed to be addressed within that refurbishment plan. To date, we've had visits from several aspects of the team that will be implementing that, and at the moment it's about scheduling that and making sure that all the elements that are required are put together. So in the meantime, we will continue to monitor. We'll address the actual volume as well, because now we've got more knowledge about the travel of that, and also ensure that doors and windows at the moment that have been open are closed, and attempt to refocus minds around the volume.
And one further question with regards to the outdoor garden space. Everyone naturally assumes a pub with a garden, it will be used. I have no issues and no problems. Like I said, I've lived there 31 years. I appreciate people drinking in the garden. Can we have it, you know, should this pub garden just not be closed at a certain time so that there isn't people out there? You say you've now got a smoking area at the front of the property. Could we limit, obviously, people using the rear of the property so as to not disturb those neighbours whose gardens and premises actually are affected by the noise of the garden?
I think what I have learned from the site is that when we've directed people to smoke at the front, complaints increase. What we need to do is we need to move further forward with trellising and the mitigation steps that we're taking in terms of the garden. The problem is also in terms of numbers. If we've got 50 people in the pub at 11:30 p.m, putting them to smoke at the front of the property is going to create more noise and more distraction. It's preferable from a noise travelling point of view for them to be within the garden, and ideally under the tent structure, which again provides some noise insulation. I hear what you're saying. I do. I think the position that I have is that the entire space is utilised. And so when we're talking about things like smoking, there is a high prevalence of people that still smoke tobacco. There's obviously people that vape. And to try and bundle them into that front area, I think would create a genuine public safety issue alongside the noise disturbance. Having heard again what you said, it's something that we will address in terms of looking to actively and proactively manage. We're not, as I say, we're not here to try and cause issues. The business has evolved since we arrived in February, and we're very mindful of actually being a presence within the community that is not negative and working with those concerns. And I would say again, it's the sort of thing that you can contact me anytime about, and I will explain what we are or haven't done and take on board what you say.
Can I just ask my client a very quick question on that point before we continue? Do you mind, Chair? You give me a moment's grace. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify something. We're more than content for a condition to go on the... Sorry, we're more than content for a condition to go on the licence that limits the use of the garden for these extended hours to all but smokers. So actually we bring everyone in as currently is permitted by the premises licence, which, as we've discussed before under Taylor versus Manchester, we can't take that away. But we're more than happy to say that for the extended hours, the garden must be cleared from everyone except smokers, if that assists.
Okay, and my concern was obviously the current licence is for 190 people on premises. You're obviously applying to extend that licence to the garden area and the front area, as well as the building itself, because obviously at present the current licence is only for the building. That then obviously is going to allow increased numbers. Increased numbers in a garden means higher volume. So it was just more concerned that obviously you're applying for outdoor licence for an area which is going to increase the numbers of people on the property. I appreciate that you can't control people's volume, but you can obviously monitor it and try to avoid it and negate too much of an issue for us as residents in the local vicinity.
Yeah, the licence really doesn't help us here on that, because you've identified what is a condition that says 190 people inside, and that's something that was discussed with licensing. So that has nothing to do with the garden or numbers in the garden. That condition in and of itself actually is suspended under what's called the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, which was 2008 from memory, but it's been a while since I've had to quote it, which actually suspends that condition because all those matters are dealt with under the fire risk assessment. The fire risk assessment has changed the number that is permitted inside, and the numbers outside are very separate to that. So that 190 number doesn't relate to the operation of the premises, albeit I can see why it looks like it does.
I'm sorry, you didn't put an objection in? No. Okay, back to you. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had the World Cup, and it's obviously shown a few areas of issues and problems that are being resolved or implementation for correction to those. There's been no mention by anybody with the fact that it is the closest pub to the Gillingham Football Club, so therefore is obviously on match days, again, swarms of people, etc. Obviously, we haven't had Gillingham playing at present, but that obviously is something that is going to be coming into play very soon. We've had a few friendlies recently. So I know you've got match day rules with regards to World Cup series and events like that. Are there any implementations that are going to be put in place with regards to general Gillingham football games? Because when they do play another team that are very local, obviously we have issues with parking when football's on anyway, but that's nothing the pub can control. But the numbers in the pub will obviously increase, specifically on those days.
So when we came in, Gillingham were at the tail end of their season and not performing particularly well, but it gave us 6 or 7 match days to actually look at operations around Gillingham. And there are 2 parts to Gillingham. One is things that we have to balance. One is who the opposition are, and 2, the numbers that we anticipate for the pub. On a typical week, on a Saturday, we will see people arriving at the pub from 10:30 until around 3 o'clock, which is when kick-off is, with people then returning normally around 5 o'clock. And what happens is that tends to coincide with an afternoon kick-off in the Premier League. So they'll then watch the football, and then we'll see a change in the crowd around sort of 7:30, 8 p.m, where the football fans will have, in the lion's share of them, will have gone home, and then we'll have an evening crowd that may be in for food or whatever's happening that evening. Sometimes it's an additional football match. The implementation that we've made is that it's a home fans pub only now, and that's robust, and that's monitored by me on the door, and that means that club colours from anybody else obviously readily identify somebody, but we will also look at match tickets, and we will speak to people. And we've spoken to the police, repeatedly on match days. They're actually pretty fantastic on match days. They come and do a couple of visits throughout the day. And we, if you like, have sort of a pre-shift brief with them around midday where they tell me how many of them are out, how many are active, if we should expect any issues. And in the main, it works pretty well. The numbers of people that we normally get at our peak are between 250 and 300 across the inside and the garden. And as I say, the returning numbers are generally about half of that. So we have 2 sort of peak periods, and one of the ways that we manage and mitigate that is through numbers of staff. So we will typically have at least 12 staff for those times. The other thing we benefit from with the 3 o'clock kickoff is that obviously activity starts earlier. So it means that we're not in a sense where people may have been to other licensed establishments and imbibed alcohol previously or prior to coming to us. And we also have the benefit, because it's a home pub, of knowing the crowd. So we have a very consistent crowd, and a lot of people travel quite a great deal of distance, including obviously local attendees, but the home fans only policy has worked very well. For the evening games, we see a different profile. Again, home fans only, but it tends to be people that come in post-work and they'll have something to eat, and they'll tend to leave by 7:30, and in those scenarios, very few return post-match. And as I say, there's about 8 of those on a Tuesday. This weekend, for example, is the Carabao Cup, which isn't as popular as a normal league match, and we anticipate somewhere in the region of 150 football fans. We also have a charity day this weekend, and we have 14 staff working throughout the day to manage it. One of the reasons that the original application was made was for the outside bar, and the outside bar focus is really around the Gillingham Games, and it's to try and manage people within the environment, as we were talking about pinch points of doors and things like that. By having a bar in the garden, it means that obviously we have a presence in the garden, but it also means that there's less travel by people within the environment. So to succinctly answer your question, which I probably didn't do, we proactively manage it through being a home fans only pub. We liaise with the police. We employ enough competent staff to ensure that things are managed well, and also we have a good knowledge of the crowd and react to them accordingly.
Sorry, I just have one last question. When you said about you're going to put plants in to sort of dampen the noise, when do you expect that to take place?
So the quotation for the trellising is in action at the moment. I'm expecting that to be finalised at the end of the week. The caveat around planting is weather. So the actual work for the trellising won't take too long, but we are all hoping, I'm sure, that the weather will break imminently, but I can say with some confidence it will be during September. It will obviously be weather dependent. Again, we've got issues with turf and grass and things like that, which we can't do anything about at the moment due to the weather, and hosepipe bans and things like that. So.
I have one more question with regards to the temporary event notices that you had in place where you wanted to observe dispersal, and you're saying that it is dispersal. What observations, did you have records, observations? Was there any actual documentation? Counts, how was this observed is more my point.
Yeah, I understand that. Throughout that period, obviously it was an intensely busy time. So I worked every England game, and then I worked sporadically on other games. And I observed through communication with staff, but also with customers. And the nights where we had real pinch points with customers were the ones where there was an arbitrary end to the night. So, for example, the Argentina game. So where the government legislation allowed till 1 and everybody left. Sorry, half the people left at the end of the match. It tended to be right at that time. That's where we had issues. And so the reason around the dispersal, as I say, as I come back to, is trying to allow people to leave, if you like, under their own steam without creating pressure, but equally in an organised manner. And so, again, talking to the police and doing a review, because the police put an analyst onto the pub in terms of any reports that they'd had since our time there, and they identified that in the main, everything was, in the main, issues were related to football. And so that's why we work with the police to determine a set of conditions that would provide them comfort, obviously provide us comfort as well. And again, we discuss with them about the reasoning behind our dispersal request in terms of an additional hour. And as we can see, they're not here raising any objection to that, and have in fact, through the agreement of their conditions, effectively endorsed what I'm asking for. I know you haven't got them here to ask questions of directly, but that wasn't a 1-minute process. That's a process that we engaged with prior to making the application for the licence and during. So Carrie from licensing and I have a very close relationship and speak frequently. And we hope that gives you some comfort that we engage regularly and we do look to do the best in each scenario and outcome.
Just obviously, generally, if a pub closes at 11, everyone is expected to leave at 11. This is not obviously specific to yourselves. If a pub closes at 12, you know, generally everyone has to leave at 12. No matter what time you close, you're still going to have those people that will wait until closing time to be kicked out, which is still going to have effects with regards to public nuisance and public safety on outside the premises.
It is a fair point, but also it is proven in the industry generally, and it's reflected in the guidance as well, that later hours can help with a staggered approach. So of course you will get some people who want to stay to the last knockings, but actually people tend to go out a little earlier at the moment and tend to leave a little earlier than they used to, and that's across the whole industry, and is evidenced in various papers through various organisations. So it does work. You of course will get the last people, but then that's about managing the dispersal appropriately, and it's easier to manage, let's say, a group of 5 leaving at the end on their own at the last knockings than, as was referred to earlier, you know, a large group of people who then start mingling outside because they're all waiting for limited Ubers, which is the challenge at the moment that's been identified.
I did ask if there was any records of these observations, if you had any records in my last question of these observations. I know it's observations from, but did you implement, you know, normally we have, everyone leaves at this time, and, you know, a written record or an auditory record that shows that the dispersal was different?
Well, the police are now analysed the dispersal, so they have their own records. We didn't carry out any evidential records, but we did liaise with the police during the time so that they could then carry out their analysis, is my understanding. So I can't show you records, but there has been an analysis and it has been worked through with the police, who obviously, as you know, aren't here today.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring you to the point where it said that obviously it's actually in your letter that said that the temporary event notices to extend this trading hours, not just obviously for the World Cup, and this was to observe dispersal of the customers. So obviously, if you're making observations, surely there would be some sort of, a little bit of record. Do you have any records? Were any records taken for the temporary event notice? Not just for the World Cup, I'm talking about other nights where you had the temporary event notices.
Sorry, there's 2 things. One, I have a reporting mechanism with Punch where we would submit any incidences through to them. So apologies, my not being direct with it. The point I was trying to make around the analysis was effectively its engagement of emergency services, which was the key, because that directly correlates to where the issues lay. And so, for example, and forgive me bringing it up again, but the night with the very late kickoff with, I believe it was a Mexico game, which was at 2 a.m., that was a really good case in point where, albeit it was late and it was at night, we were able to disperse everybody. We had around 200 people in attendance on the site, and there were no issues with people departing that match. Again, on other nights, again, where we operated till later, there were no involvements with emergency services and there were no reports made through to Punch, and we do report through via an app system if there are issues, so they can be followed up on.
Your questioning complete now? Yep. Okay, thank you. We move on to the next bit, which is panel questions. So I'll start with you, if that's all right.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all. I want to go back to the Mexico game. I know it's a one-off. It's not going to happen for the next 8 years, probably, if longer. You said there was about 250 people. And I was quite surprised there was no limit to the amount of people you can have in your garden. I don't know what the size of your garden is. And then you talked about the fire risk assessment. So what number, if at all, did the fire risk assessment say could be in that garden at any one time?
Yeah, so the fire risk assessment allows for 250 people inside and 200 people outside. And those numbers weren't breached in either inside or outside.
So at any other, you could have a, I don't know, 21st birthday, a wedding or whatever, there could be 250 people in, in that garden in the summer any time.
200. 200,
sorry. The noise from 200 people would be quite immense for the residents, I would imagine. You're talking about screening. Have we thought about maybe soundproofing? I mean, it happens in my local area where there is soundproofing to alleviate that. I mean, I just find it amazing that many people. But that's just me, especially when you've got background music at all times in the garden. That slightly worries me, that it could be going on at 11, 12s and 200 people. But thank you for your answer.
The background music would obviously, if you were minded to grant this, but with the additional condition we've offered, which is the garden will close apart from smokers at the current hours, so any extended hours the garden closes. You could also mandate that obviously the background music has to go off at that time as well, I mean, without any problem at all. I think it's fair to observe from the operation of pubs that if you were booking a party for 200 people in a garden, you'd be taking a significant risk of statutory noise abatement notices. That's separate from the odd charity event in the garden during the year, which I don't think anyone would have an issue with. But that's why you have inside, and that's where you put on those events, because that's where it's easier to serve, easier for food. During the daytime, of course, there could be events out in the garden, but they would have to end at a reasonable time as well, because as I say, licensing isn't supposed to manage every single risk, because if it did, nothing would ever get granted. It's there to look at the promotion of the licensing objectives and enact that balancing act. But outside of that, you've got statutory noise nuisance, you've got reviews of premises licenses, so there's a lot of means by which these things can be controlled and controlled quickly. You know as well as I do, on a very hot day in the sun, like this summer, pub gardens are full, pubs are empty. If you're lucky enough to have a pub garden, you're going to do very well in this summer. If you don't have a pub garden, those are the pubs that are in real danger. And I'm afraid that's the nature of these things. And in the winter, the pubs that are very small inside and have big gardens do very poorly, etc. So there's always that balancing act, I think it's fair to say.
Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Councillor Jackson, do you have any questions?
I think my one's been answered, because I just wanted clarification about that you were going to put in that exemption about that thing about the garden being closed at the normal hours, only to smokers. But it just listening, I thank Simon for being really honest and open, and the brilliant questions. I don't think you left us many other questions. It was really brilliant. But what struck me was you've lived on the area for 31 years and the pub's been there, and just the communication between the two of you. So I just, I feel that communication is the best here. And when the Tens nights happened, in retrospect, I think it probably would have been, if you're new to the area, to maybe alert the residents that it was going to go on later. Because I understand that, if you're ready for a football match, but then if something else happens, it's not. I'm going to stop there, because I'm not going to ask a question. I just feel like it's...
I think it's fair to say that there was social media presence about it, but you're absolutely right that for things like that, there can be better communication. And this is an open invite to say, look, let's continue this. I mean, to be fair, I've heard barristers at licensing hearings do worse job of questioning applicants than I've heard today, and I might be coming to you for some advice on questioning later. But thank you for the point.
I've just got a few questions. Communication is key, especially with residents. You've mentioned how good you are in terms of gauging with staff and customers, but people that your neighbours are really good barometers. So looking at what PC Knight has said and alluded to by the objectors, where do you keep your log of incidents?
So the log of incidents is in an app called Appian, which is punch provided. So incidents are logged into that. And then we carry written records for things like refusal records, and things are available in the pub for inspection.
Okay, thank you. And what else do you log apart from refusals in there? What other incidents may you record?
So we record any incident of serious crime, obviously, and interactions with police, ambulance, and any incidents that we feel that need flagging to punch. We've got a very comprehensive CCTV system within the pub. We've also just added additional cameras to the garden area as well. And so we work as required to save and store CCTV, but the incidents are reported online comprehensively with as many details as that we have about either the person, the group, the times, etc., where the incident takes place, so it can be referred back to when required.
Just to add to that, so that then is obviously reported to the operations team, and the operations team have direct line to the pub. That would include where there's been reports, and let's say the police have come and said, well, we've had a report from the resident of X, and then on investigation it's turned out not to be related to the pub. That gets reported on Appian as well, because it's important that we keep all those records, and we can help then with residents if there are issues elsewhere.
That was my point, because you can't come here and kick the ball across the road to it was their noise. If you've got your logs, then that's robust, and and it's not the blame game. And I think being new, as Councillor Jackson's already mentioned, it's about being solution focused. This happened, the football happened. How am I going to listen to make sure the neighbours are heard, and also give them the respect that they deserve to do my best to ensure that it's not going to happen again? And also, with cutting down all your bushes, you have obviously not realised how good trees are, not only for shade, but also for acoustics, and I know you're going to be addressing that, but again, that would be a really good, communication aspect. And I'm glad you're going to be issuing a phone number. But on your phone, you can also have a decibel reader. I've got one on mine because I'm an elected councillor, and some of my residents complain about noise. And it's really easy to see whether you're in the boundaries or not in the boundaries, and it's recorded, so it's then non-negotiable. So those are quick things that you can be doing. How likely are you to be getting this air conditioning? Because I think apart from the greenery going and the excessive heat wave, it's not actually good to have your windows open in a heat wave, actually. They should be open overnight, and then it cools the place down, and curtains drawn. That is the best thing according to the Climate Change Committee. But is that likely really to be happening in the refurb?
So to start with the first point about the greenery, one of the reasons I had to take action was because there was a tree, and there was a 16-foot branch that fell off it because it was dead. So I would not have cut it down unless I absolutely had to, because it caused damage to a neighbour's fence. And so it was with absolute regret that we had to remove it. The point is well taken also about soundproofing and looking to mitigate as much as possible the noise. In respect of the point of being new, and I don't intend this to be a contentious point, it's very hard for me to communicate with people that don't make themselves known to me. So what I have is I have robust communication with a huge number of immediate neighbours, and they range from people that have lived next door for 50 years through to people that have lived next door for 5 minutes, like I've been in the community for 5 minutes. And so my communication and valuation with the public, if you like, is perhaps a slightly more captive audience, although I do sweep the front step and speak to people as they walk past walking dogs and things that don't ever come into the pub. Further than that, what we've endeavoured to do is utilise social media. So looking at things like Facebook and stuff to put out announcements and trying to encourage people to share and communicate across with people. And there has been some interactions. And we've also got our direct messaging open. Having said that, I could do better, and so I will endeavour to do so.
Can I just make one observation on the music outbreak point, which I think is important. Obviously, they came in February. This is a pub that has done music in the past, and as we've heard, has done it in the past without causing any disturbance. So there is no need for, if you like, more. You don't need to do more to the building to be able to enclose music within it sufficiently that it not causes a public nuisance. I think that's evidence from what's been said anyway, and also from experience from February of doing music at the premises. Yes, there have been occasions where it's not quite worked, but again, we live and learn with that. I think one of the things we did talk about earlier is you do have an app on your phone to look at decibels, and he does do the observations around the neighbourhood anyway. That can obviously be refined if, for instance, and you'll know this as an experienced committee, and noise travels in very weird and invidious ways. You can stand at one place and hear nothing, and then weirdly the house behind gets some bass noise because there's a sewer that runs through the garden and connects to their chimney. I mean, I've seen all kinds of weird and wonderful things, but that's where communication becomes really important, because if that's causing something there and then we know about it, you wouldn't necessarily know about it without that direct communication. So, of course, things could be done better. There are learning points. This is a really good forum for starting new conversations with people who live slightly further away as well, that you wouldn't automatically think might have the same issues. So we want to build on that.
Thank you. And finally, Simon, around the World Cup, can I just ask what 3 main learning points were there for you, not peers, you?
No problem. So I think the 3 key things that we've taken on board from there are that demand is higher than one would potentially expect. And so what that does is it creates diverse groups of people and people that travel. So what we saw during the World Cup was people coming from much further afield to the pub as well. So in terms of crowd management and people management, the approach is to have more staff. And I think that's something that certainly was something that we took into account and we put in place. The second aspect is, for me, is the uniqueness of the moment, if you like, and the fact that, as I say, this was a once-in-a-generation situation, because we'd never had World Cup kickoffs at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the past, albeit the World Cup had previously been in America in the 90s, but England weren't there. Despite there being international and national interest, that doesn't mean that 100% of people are necessarily engaged with the football. And so it's something that we need to bear in mind, obviously. And the third thing is the varied schedules that people have locally as well, and how the impact of our activity could impact them in ways that we hadn't considered previously.
Thank you. So we move on to the next part of the agenda, which is the objectors able to speak and call their witnesses if they have any.
Sorry, yeah, I did read the Licensing Act and the Live Music Act thoroughly through, only because I wanted to come prepared. I'm not an anti-pub person. at all by any means. Obviously, like I say, I bought the house, there was a pub there. I'm just trying to find my objection, sorry. And I've lived at my property for 31 years. I have used the pub, I do use the pub. I haven't used it recently. But yeah, my objection was basically based on the incident which was on the Wednesday match, which wasn't the Mexico match. I thankfully can say I wasn't at home for that. But revolves around that particular night. I think it was Argentina. And obviously there was a late licence allowed by the government. But unfortunately, that particular night was the night that drove me insane, because you say you had a temporary event notice, which you may well have done, but as a resident, I wasn't aware that you had this temporary event notice. I knew that government legislation had allowed you to play the game, etc. It was the fact that the music was still going on very, very loud, very, very loud into the night. I know that this has been addressed, but that was the night that I wrote my representation, because that was the night I was actually very, very angry and very, very upset, as any resident would be, having to listen to your music. The patrons walking up and down the road, going to their cars. I know you can't help where people park their vehicles, and we unfortunately are one of the closest non-permit roads to one Gillingham football ground. We have a Tesco's Express around the corner, which obviously has delivery drivers and patrons go in there. We have other shops in the vicinity, the pub. There is also a social club, which I often sometimes hear the music from. As I said, I don't have an issue. I just have an issue with the lateness that you're planning on staying open, because that particular night when people were leaving, there was door slamming, there was arguments, even down my road. I was lucky not to have to deal with some of the issues that I believe some of outside of the front of your property had to deal with. But yeah, public noise, public nuisance, public safety. I didn't feel comfortable going out and telling these people to move on. They were urinating up my neighbour's fence. You know, you can't help where people do that, but obviously there is a toilet in the pub. But I didn't feel safe going out and speaking to these people, because many of whom were actually quite intoxicated leaving at that time of the morning. Longer hours would, for me, mean more drinking time. Unfortunately, that, in my eyes, is misuse of alcohol. As I said, don't have an issue with the pub, don't have an issue with the pub staying open until midnight as it stands, and I'm glad that you've put the objection in with regards to not having entertainment later, and you're putting in stuff in place with regards to the noise distribution. But following the closure of the event, I then had an evening...
Sorry, can I just ask you to stop a second, just while Councillor Jackson returns?
Oh, sorry. I should shout. Yeah, following, unfortunately, the closure, I know that I can't submit any evidence for events that happened after this was submitted, because this event actually happened after. But unfortunately, I do have a decibel-meter on my phone, and I did record 54 decibels at my property on that particular night, which wasn't a World Cup night. But yeah, my objection was basically based on prevention of public nuisance and public safety in the close proximity to the pub. I don't believe longer hours will make any, will help with that. It will just make it worse. It'll make it later into the evening, and for those of us that maybe have other things that implement our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you've just said, because, like I said, I've lived Carlton Avenue 20 years. I've never, ever had an issue with the pub until recently, with the volume of noise, the volume of music. My main concern is people an extra hour drinking. It's just going to carry on 3, 4 in the morning, people on the roads arguing, shouting. And it just quite frankly, I felt like a lack of respect with the volume of the noise. Like, it's a pub, I understand. You want to play music in the garden, people are in the garden, but the late night music and the volume, it was my biggest issue. But I do appreciate the phone number being provided, the steps that are going to be taken for the outside garden to sort of tampen down the noise.
Okay, if you finish speaking, can we listen to your evidence? Thank you. As already mentioned, we couldn't get the others to download, but I think we've seen those three that we could. Okay, thank you. It's now, if you've finished, it's over to the applicant and representatives to ask any questions they may like to of the objectors.
No, thank you very much, and thank you for their time today coming here.
Okay, so then it's over to us. Do we have any additional questions? Councillor Sands, Councillor Jackson?
Yeah, thank you very much. And my colleagues and in fact everybody's talked about communication, which obviously is the way forward. Is there a way that the residents group could meet on a bi-monthly meeting or whatever the case may be to stop these things festering on? Would that be a way forward, and could that kind of happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, we're really trying to embed ourselves in the community to be available for everybody. And if we're causing issues, even without unknowingly, I'd love the opportunity to meet people and be able to communicate and take steps to resolve them. Like we're obviously available any day, but if there was a specific meeting requested bi-monthly, monthly, I'm more than happy to facilitate.
I echo what Councillor Sands said, I would like that to be put in place if it's not by, I mean, I think 4 times a year is probably okay, but yeah.
Obviously, one incident was where the tonneau was being used when was Rita leaving, or was it her birthday party, the member of staff? And you came up with a solution to not have that happen again. But obviously, listening, how do you feel about what you've heard?
It's quite...
Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that question because that's for you guys. Ignore that. Do you have any questions for the licence people?
Chair,
I was going to... I was going to say that obviously seeing the evidence of the music, did you realise it was so loud for us residents?
apologies, just to intervene. So at this moment in time,
I
it's
can't
for the
answer that.
panel to ask the objectors questions. We've already had the point where the objectors can ask the applicant questions.
Thank you. Can I ask, were you the ones that recorded the evidence that we've heard? And also, how did you record it? And what took you out onto the streets that night to do that recording? So 3 points.
Yeah, 2 of the videos, the last 2 were ones that I recorded from my bedroom window. And I'm quite a distance from the pub. About 4 or 5 houses separate us. And one was taken on the England versus Mexico game, so we already established they had their license to screen the game outdoors. Still very loud. And the second one was taken, I believe, 10 to midnight. So you can imagine, if you're trying to sleep, the volume, and when it's a hot night, you've got no choice but to open your windows. So did I answer your question? Sorry. I had to compress the videos in order to email them, so it probably changed the time, but I do have it on my phone if you want to see it.
And Piers, that's exactly why I asked that question, because I saw the times. When you say, are they terraced houses that you live in? I'm just trying to, in my head, think about metres and how far you are, please.
Yeah, terrace, sorry, I'm from America, so these terms are a bit different for me.
Semi-detached, so
But
5 semi-detached houses away with drives, yeah?
not every house has a drive, so we're on the corner of Carlton Avenue and 4th Avenue, and the pub is on Sturdy and Toronto Road, so it's kind of like almost diagonal, but on the opposite ends of the road. And so I recorded, we have a loft conversion, so I was above. So, I mean, possibly the music can travel, but there has been times where I've had the windows shut, the telly on, and you can still hear the music.
Sorry, the noise is... You have no questions?
No questions, thank you very much.
Can we just have a minute? If that noise continues, I'm going to have to stop. It's stopping my thought process because I can't hear in this ear and I can't see in this eye. But is it just grass cutting?
Can I take this moment then?
I just want to be fair. Can we have a 2-minute break? Would that be all right?
Of course. Can I just take this moment to apologise for my shoes? I know it sounds like a really weird thing to say, but I've got a bad foot. I would ordinarily never turn up at a committee wearing trainers, and I kind of hoped that there was a barrier at the front of the desk. So just in case anyone spotted it, I apologise, I have a bad foot.
Well, I hope it gets better. Can we just have a 2-minute comfort break? Thank you. thank you for that indulgence for my hidden disabilities. Councillor Jackson, you wanted to ask a question to the objectors.
I'm saying to him.
Okay, I think, you know, for my neurodiversity and my hearing impairment and eyesight, you've allowed me to have a break. So I'm going to allow these people to sit. Yep, that's fine. Yeah. And I think the noise is now gone. Hurrah. So we're still on panel questions, and Councillor Jackson would like to ask the objectors a question.
First, I want to say thank you for the evidence, because it's really useful. When that happened, did anybody that got the evidence contact the pub directly and complain about it, either on that day or with the next day or within the next couple of days?
No, I did not.
Thank you.
I certainly don't have any more questions. No, none for you, Councillor Sands. Right, we're on to summing up, and we'll start with the applicants, if that's okay. Piers, are you doing it? Sorry, objectors first. Apologies. Start with you guys.
So I basically would like the application refused for the extended hours. I appreciate that they have listened to our concerns, but and obviously have put in things in place for the current issues that are happening. I just don't feel extra hours are suitable at the moment, especially as it's a highly residential area. That's my summing up.
I live a distance from the pub, so I'm probably not as affected as some of the residents, but I think compromising on maybe times, the compromises that he's already suggested and planning to put in place, I'm happy to compromise.
Thank you, Piers.
Thank you, and I'll keep this mercifully brief because I can hear a lawnmower somewhere coming near us again. Look, thank you. First of all, thank you for engaging. And secondly, let's reiterate our apologies for the disturbance. Things can be done better, and I think everyone's accepted where they can. But you've also heard, I think, from a very proactive operator who's spoken very eloquently about a business that he has turned around and is continuing to turn around, and that brings its own teething problems, more people, etc. And with Punch's support, you've heard that there are additional actions in place. The application as it stands, therefore, is this. There is an application to license the garden to allow for a garden bar. From the summings up, I don't think that is the main bone of contention. So I'm going to submit that that can certainly be granted as applied for. The second part of the application is the extended hours, and as you've heard, that is the key consideration here. But that has been amended, or we're proposing, were you minded to grant it, to amend it, so that the hours extended would only be for alcohol, not for regulated entertainment, except for we would ask for the extra half an hour on a Sunday, so regulated entertainment could go till 11 p.m, which actually follows the Live Music Act's recorded music exemption in any event, but let's make that tidy. We've offered a condition, which I can assist in wording, but I'm sure Mr. Rogers is more than capable of, in relation to a contact number being made available. We're also prepared to offer a condition we would suggest for quarterly resident meetings to be hosted at the premises, to be advertised in advance to those residents who wish to do so, and to be posted on social media so that there's, for those people who follow the links, but also if people directly ask for a communication, there could be a WhatsApp group. You're absolutely right, and all three councillors have made this point. Communication at some point has broken down, has not been as good as it could be. You've also heard from Simon that actually he has proactively sought to engage with neighbours where he can. So it's not a case of I've shut everyone down, but some people have been missed, and Simon accepts that that can be done better. So hopefully today is the start of a much more proactive interaction between people, so that if there is an incident like we heard, and of course hearing something on a speaker in a room like this from a phone, it's difficult to gauge what everything was, but if on the night someone had phoned the pub and they could come out and hear, we could work together to reduce those volumes. You've heard about the proactive measures in the garden in terms of changing the speaker systems. These directional speakers are fantastic compared to what they were. That's all being done immediately. So my submission is that if we remove the regulated entertainment, with the exception of half an hour on a Sunday, that deals with the main concern in terms of outbreak. We have the concern of later dispersal, of course, but then the evidence, and it's something that's been shared with the police, as you have heard, demonstrates that that longer period of time will aid people drifting away and prevent one of the main issues, which is people hanging around outside for limited resources, such as Ubers, etc., or just that natural inclination to carry on your chat outside if you've all been thrown out before you've finished it. It does work. It does work. And I think it's been demonstrated by Simon's operation here. I will remind you that obviously paragraph 2.26 of the guidance, people are responsible for their own behaviour away from premises. And I think the residents recognise that actually in their comments. I think very fairly that was recognised, but it's a reminder here. And I would remind you there are no objections from responsible authorities where there's been considerable engagement, changes to conditions, additions of conditions that have allowed them to withdraw or indeed not make any representations to be before you today. And as I say, that I would give that considerable weight, or my submission is that that needs to be given considerable weight. Finally, obviously, I've taken you through the guidance, the new Home Office documents, and the new approach, which is, well, it's not a new approach, the reminder of the approach that this is a permissive piece of legislation. So my submission is, with the amendments that we've set out and the further amendments that we've offered, plus the two new conditions, this application can be granted. Thank you.
Can I thank you all for being eloquent and clear, and obviously coping with the distractions of this hearing. We are intending to make a decision today, but you do need to leave to give us time to make that deliberation and give it time. You're welcome to come back when we've decided, or the wonderful Julie will send it via email and in writing within the next 5 working days. Thank you. Right, thank you for waiting. We've reached a decision and I'd like to read that out to you if I may. So point 1, the panel has considered the application for the full variation of the premises licence at the Cricketers, Studley Avenue, Gillingham, together with the operating schedule, the officer and report and appendices, supplementary information provided on behalf of the applicant, and all written and oral presentations insofar as they were relevant to us determine this application. In reaching its decision, our panel has had regard to the law, including the Licensing Act of 2003, the application and the case law and statutory guidance issued under Section 182, the National Licensing Framework, Medway's Council Statement and Licensing Policy, and the 4 licensing objectives. The panel has determined that this variation application on its own individual facts and the evidence placed before it. The panel has considered all concerns raised by local residents with care. The panel accepts that the representation raised capable and engaging licensing objectives, in particular the prevention of public nuisance and to a lesser extent the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety and the protection of children from harm. However, the panel has considered only those matters relevant to the licensing objectives and has placed no weight on matters falling outside the realm of licensing. The panel has placed limited weight on assertions that we were not supported by sufficient evidence. The panel has attached significant weight to the fact that no responsible authority maintained objections to the application. The panel regards the view of responsible authorities as important, given that their expertise in this representative area and the notes in particular conditions have been agreed with Kent Police trading standards to address the concerns identified during the consultation. There are also notably no objections from public health in relation to noise nuisance. The panel notes that the extension of licensing areas to external areas shown on the submitted plan were not objected to today, but the panel has considered the written objections nevertheless. Notwithstanding those objections, the panel is satisfied that granting part of the application would not undermine the licensing objectives. There were contention in relation to the extension of licensable hours. The panel has grappled with the evidence as a whole. It accepts that the residents' representations provided first-hand evidence experience, noise disturbance and concerns about customers' behaviour which are relevant to the licensing objective, and we have taken those concerns seriously. The panel has carefully considered the impact of the extended hours that it's persuaded that it would promote, subject to restrictions used on being limited to smokers after 11 p.m. as outlined in the conditions below. The panel note and accept the invitation to vary the application to remove the request for extension of the current regulated entertainment hours, which was therefore remain currently on the licence. The panel also notes in the majority, the underlining concerns given to the objections related to the exceptional circumstances of the World Cup, which not only affected the local businesses, but the national impact. The evidence that the panel heard was ultimately does not justify, in our mind, the conclusion that the application, if granted, will be subject to proposed conditions and would likely be undermined by the licensing objectives. The panel is satisfied, therefore, that the conditions offered in the operating schedule, together with the additional conditions agreed by Kent Police and trading standards and further measures to set out supplementary information combined with conditions set out below are appropriate, reasonable and proportionate and enforceable in circumstances of this case and capable in promoting the licensing objectives. Those specific conditions of the panel are: A, the premises shall remain a permanent telephone number which shall be available during operational hours, which shall be regularly and publicly advertised for the purpose of facilitating communications with local residents and patrons. B, the external garden area, including any external bar servery, shall not be used for sale or supply of consumable alcohol or any licensed activities after 11 o'clock, hours 23, and on any day after 2023. The garden shall only be used as a smoking area. C, the premises will arrange, advertise and facilitate quarterly meetings with residents to allow their concerns and persons the opportunity to communicate with the premises. The premises must ensure that all doors and windows are closed after 11 p.m. and on any days, saved in respect for external doors only used for access and entrance to the building. Accordingly, the panel grants the variation in terms outlined. Thank you. The meeting is closed. Thank you for your patience. You too should be consider becoming councillors. You're very eloquent and well versed, and we could do with more real people in our galleries and speaking their minds, and also girl power. Thank you, everybody.